Welcome, curious minds, to the deep dive. Today, we're embarking on a really extraordinary journey.
Absolutely.
We're going to challenge some of our most fundamental assumptions about life and reality itself. I mean, if you've ever felt that our conventional understanding of biology or maybe even physics might be missing a piece of the puzzle,
A big piece?
yeah, a big piece, then this deep dive is definitely for you. As always, our mission here is to sift through a stack of your shared sources, and today, wow, we have something pretty groundbreaking. A codex on ontological biologistics. We're going to try and extract the most important, surprising, and frankly, mind-expanding nuggets of knowledge from it. Sort of a shortcut to being truly well-informed on a topic that could completely redefine what being alive even means.
That's absolutely right. And this isn't just, another scientific paper or some new theory floating around. The source material we're exploring today, it proposes nothing less than a radical reimagining of existence itself.
Radical is the word.
It really is. It suggests that life isn't simply some biological thing that happens within the universe. Instead, it argues that life is lawfully, intricately woven into the very fundamental architecture of reality.
Woven in, okay.
It's about uncovering the deep blueprints, you could say, the foundational logic that gives rise to all forms of being. It's quite profound.
So let's get straight to it then. Our topic today, ontological biologistics, the coherence architecture of life across dimensions. Quite a title.
It is.
And this deep dive, it's designed to redefine your understanding, our listener, about where life truly comes from, how its intelligence operates, and its really astonishing potential. We're talking about a scope that stretches from the smallest, molecular scales.
Right down to the quantum foam almost.
All the way up to vast cosmic civilizations. It's a truly monumental vision, and one that, well, it promises to reshape how we see ourselves in the universe.
Indeed. And this codex, it presents a unified, almost elegant framework. It guides us on a journey that remarkably begins in the apparent emptiness of the vacuum of space.
The vacuum. Right.
And extends all the way to highly evolved, what it calls syntelligent civilizations, scattered across galaxies. Intelligent, synthetic, and intelligent. Fused.
Intelligent. Got it.
And every single step of this incredible journey, every form of life and organization is rooted in what the Codex identifies as the primordial logic of the cosmos.
Coherence.
Coherence. That seems to be the key word.
It's the key word. It's presented as the fundamental engine of existence, the very breath that shapes reality.
Okay, so coherence. Let's unpack this core concept right away because it really feels like the foundation for everything else we're going to discuss today.
Absolutely essential.
The Codex presents this truly radical idea. Life isn't just some lucky biochemical accident happening in a primordial soup.
Right. Forget the soup for a moment.
Instead, it describes life as a lawful emergence of structured resonance. Lawful emergence. And the entire meta-discipline, this new field of study exploring this, is called Ontological Biologistics.
It's about the universal origin of life, rooted in something called coherence structuring, and the predictable emergence of what it terms life-tronic systems across any dimension, planet, or even just certain field conditions. So it's not just biology as we know it on Earth, but a universal theory of how life, in its absolute broadest sense, comes to be.
Precisely. And to truly grasp this, we have to really dive headfirst into the foundational substrate itself. The Finsler Coherence Hyperfractal Fast Space, or FCHP.
Okay, FCHP, that's a mouthful.
It is a bit of a mouthful, but it's essential. Think of it as the deepest layer of reality we can conceive of, a multidimensional resonance field. It functions as the fundamental wellspring, the source from which all living systems and actually all matter patterns emerge.
All matter, too, not just life.
Everything. And here's where we make the critical distinction, the one that really flips our traditional understanding on its head. The Codex states pretty unequivocally that light does not arise in space, but as structured space in this coherent hyperfractal topology.
Whoa. Okay, say that again. Life doesn't arise in space.
But as structured space. It's not about life filling up an empty container called space. It's about life being the structuring of space, or perhaps even the process of structuring space itself.
That's a huge mental leap. Okay, let's break down that mouthful then. FCHP. What do Finsler, hyperfractal, and phase space actually mean here? Because those aren't terms you hear every day.
No, they're definitely not everyday terms.
Yeah.
And each one is chosen very carefully, packed with meaning designed to describe a reality that's far more dynamic, more alive than the sort of static, empty stage we usually imagine.
Okay, let's start with Finsler.
All right, Fizzler. Now, you might be familiar with basic Euclidean geometry, flat maps, grids, or maybe even Riemannian geometry, which, general relativity uses to describe how gravity curves space, like the classic bowling ball and a trampoline analogy.
Right, curved space.
But Finsler geometry is different. It means that the distance, or more accurately, the action, the path of least resistance, you could say, between any 2 points isn't fixed. It doesn't just depend on where you're going, but also critically on the direction you're moving, the local torsion. Think of it like a twisting force or tension in the fabric of space and the inherent spin associated with the path you take.
So the path changes depending on how you travel it.
Exactly. Imagine trying to walk across a dynamic shifting landscape, maybe like sand dunes in high wind, where every step you take literally changes the terrain underfoot, or where certain directions are much easier than others. Your path isn't just a straight line. It's constantly influenced by the terrain, by these invisible currents, by the very way you step. Finsler geometry says space itself is like that, not a smooth, fixed grid, but a dynamic, twisting, responsive field. Movement isn't just going from A to B, but actively shaping the path as you go along a coherence gradient. It's like the universe has its own incredibly flexible, context-dependent GPS system.
So space isn't passive, it's an active participant in motion. That's wild.
Precisely. It's dynamic through and through. Next, hyperfractal.
Okay, fractal I know, like snowflakes or coastlines.
Right, we often think of fractals as beautiful patterns repeating at different scales, self-similarity. But hyperfractal takes that idea much further. The FCHP structure is recursive. Yes, it repeats across scales, but the codex says it's dimension generative.
Dimension generative. What does that mean?
This is truly a mind-bending idea. It suggests that dimensions themselves, like our familiar 3 spatial dimensions, aren't just pre-given aspects of realities that we happen to live in. They emerge. They unfold dynamically through this hyperfractal coherence process. Lower dimensions nest perfectly within higher-order resonance folds.
Like Russian dolls, almost.
Sort of like Russian dolls made of vibrating patterns, yeah. Imagine dimensions stacking and unstacking or bluing into existence as these coherence patterns recursively define themselves at deeper and deeper levels. It's like our familiar 3D space is just one particularly stable pattern, one specific resonance structure that is unfolded from an even deeper, more complex, infinitely nested architecture.
So the very dimensions we experience are a result of this underlying coherence. That's quite a thought. Okay, and finally, fast space.
And finally, fast space. This term is a blend, obviously, of phase and space. What it means is that all points, all locations within this fundamental substrate aren't defined by a fixed, absolute XYZ coordinate, like on a map. Instead, they are defined by their coherence phase.
Their phase, like a wave.
Exactly like a wave, or maybe think about music. Every note, every chord, isn't just defined by where it sits on a static musical score, but by its vibration, its frequency, its phase in relation to all the other sounds happening at that moment. Fast space is described as a universe made entirely of these vibrating relationships. Structure, form, even apparent solidity are determined by resonance phase locking, where different waves of coherence lock into stable, harmonious patterns.
So location isn't the point.
Exactly. Instead of XYZ coordinates in spacetime, you have coherence harmonics and torsion signatures defining existence. It's not about where or when something is in an absolute sense. It's about the how of its resonance, its unique vibrational signature within this cosmic harmony, its relationship to everything else. It's a universe of dynamic, vibrating relationships, not static points in a void.
That's a truly profound departure from everyday intuition and certainly from conventional physics. It really does sound like a complete paradigm shift. So how does this FCHP view actually contrast with what we've traditionally understood about physics and reality?
Yeah.
I'm trying to really grasp just how different this worldview is.
It's an absolute paradigm shift, you're right. And the Codex provides a very clear comparison table almost that helps highlight just how revolutionary this perspective is. It takes us from a worldview where, matter is primary and space is this empty container to one where coherence is truly the fundamental driver, the source of everything.
Okay, let's hear some contrasts.
All right. So in traditional physics, we tend to think of space-time as a more or less fixed arena, the stage where events unfold. But in the FCHP paradigm, reality is a dynamic, phase-structured coherence field. It's not a static stage. It's a living, resonating fabric, constantly weaving and reweaving itself.
Living fabric, okay.
Where traditional physics sees points and particles like electrons, quarks, as the fundamental, indivisible building blocks.
The little billiard balls?
Kind of, yeah. The FCHP sees reality as composed of torsion-encoded coherence nodes. Think of them less as tiny solid balls and more like stable knots of pure vibration or tightly coiled patterns of organized energy, emergent properties of the field itself.
Knots of vibration. Got it.
We assume dimensions are fixed. 3 spatial, 1 temporal. That's our box. But in FCHP, dimensions aren't fixed. They emerge. They unfold through this hyperfractal resonance, becoming more complex as coherent structures stabilize and build upon themselves. It's like opening up new layers or possibilities as the universe organizes.
Okay, what about time?
Our experience of time is usually a linear axis, right? Moving relentlessly from past to future. For FCHP, time is actually a coherence gradient. It's literally the rate at which coherence shifts within the field, a measure of the buildup or decay of resonant patterns. It's a dynamic process related to the complexity of coherence, not a rigid external line.
So time isn't constant.
Not in an absolute sense, no. It's relative to the coherence dynamics.
Yeah.
Then matter is primary in traditional physics. It's a fundamental stuff. The FCHP argues coherence is primary. Matter is a secondary projection. Matter is described as simply a residue, almost, that forms when coherence patterns break down locally, or when they stabilize and condense into particularly dense, persistent patterns.
Matter is a residue.
Yeah.
And gravity.
Gravity is usually explained as the curvature of spacetime caused by massive objects. In the SCHP, curvature itself is coherence tension across nested layers of this hyperfractal field. It's a natural consequence of how coherence organizes itself, like a stretching or solding within the field due to intense resonance patterns, not just because mass is present. Mass is the result of that coherence tension, not the cause of the curvature.
Okay, this is flipping everything. Motion.
Motion is typically seen as simple displacement in space, moving from point A to point B. In the SCHP, motion is phase modulation through resonance harmonics. It's a dynamic shifting of an entity's resonance signature within the coherence field, like changing your frequency to resonate with a different part of the field. More like a surfer shifting position on a wave than a ball rolling across a floor.
Riding the wave.
Exactly. And fields, like electric or magnetic fields, are usually seen as being imposed on space, existing in space. The FCHP declares that space is a coherent field structure itself. The field is intrinsic to space. It's space, not something just added on top of it. And finally, entropy, usually defined as increasing disorder, the universe running down toward heat death. But in the FCHP, entropy is seen as local decoherence within structured fields. It's a localized breakdown of coherence within specific, organized patterns, not necessarily a universal slide into formlessness. It implies that coherence can also be rebuilt.
And observation. You mentioned that changes too.
Right. Instead of the idea that observation collapses a probability wave into a definite state, the FCHP suggests observation modulates coherence through symmetry shifts. This implies our act of observing isn't passive. It's an active participation, a tuning that actually helps shape the coherence patterns we perceive. We're part of the system.
Wow. Okay, that's a lot to take in. It really does rewrite the fundamental rules of reality as we understand them. So what does this all mean for us, the listener? Why does understanding this FCHP thing matter so much beyond just being a fascinating theoretical framework? What's the core takeaway here?
It matters profoundly because it fundamentally shifts our ontological understanding, our understanding of being itself, of why anything exists and how it functions. The implications are just enormous. If this perspective holds true, there's no absolute empty space. There are only these dynamically structured coherence fields, constantly alive, constantly self-organizing.
So the universe is alive.
At its most fundamental level, yes, in a way. There are no fundamental irreducible particles in the way we usually think of them, but rather these coherence knots that emerge through intricate field operations. Time isn't some fixed external ticking clock, but a dynamic process tied to the rate at which coherence shifts and evolves across these nested resonance domains. And matter isn't the ultimate stuff. It's the residue, the byproduct of coherence breaking symmetry or stabilizing into persistent forms. It's what happens when these vibrant coherence patterns slow down or condense enough for us to perceive them as solid.
Right.
But most importantly, and this is really the core takeaway for the entire codex, the central message, life is not a lucky accident. It is the lawful emergence of recursion in coherence dynamics.
Lawful emergence.
Yes, this means life isn't some rare, improbable event that just happened by chance here on Earth. It's portrayed as a fundamental, predictable outcome of how reality itself operates, how coherence naturally organizes. This FCHP is the foundational soil, the pre-spatiotemporal fast space, from which everything described in ontological biologistics grows. It's the blueprint for existence. To truly understand life or mind or time or space, the Codex invites us to begin right here, at this deeper, fundamentally coherent level. It's about realizing that the universe itself might be inherently alive and intelligent right down to its very roots.
Okay, so if life emerges from this structured space, from the FCHP, then how does it actually begin to form? I mean, how do we get from this incredibly abstract, vibrating field to something we might recognize, even something as seemingly simple as, say, a particle of light? This is where it gets really interesting. You mentioned the coherence vacuum and something the Codex calls the seed equation.
Indeed. And the coherence vacuum described here isn't what we typically imagine when we think of empty space. It's not just nothingness. It's described as the absolute base of all structured reality, not a void, but a field of pure potential resonance, the absolute ground state of the FCHP.
Pure potential.
Imagine it like a perfectly calm, still ocean of infinite possibility, completely full of potential energy and information, but currently undifferentiated, perfectly symmetrical. From this nullity, this ground state, emergence doesn't flow because something external pushes it. It flows through recursive coherence actualization.
Recursive coherence actualization. What's that?
Well, it's an internal process of self-organization, like a thought arising spontaneously in a quiet mind. The vacuum itself, through a process of self-reference, generates the conditions for form to appear. It bootstraps itself into existence, essentially.
Wow.
And this brings us right to the seed equation, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1. Now, this isn't presented as a mathematical trick in the usual sense. It's framed as an ontological statement, a deep philosophical declaration about the nature of existence.
Okay, break that down. 0, 0, 0, 1.
Let's try it. 0, 0, 0 on its own is mathematically undefined, right? Here, it represents unresolved potential, a state of pre-being, something that is neither 0, nothingness, nor 1, something, but pure possibility. When the 0, 0 is recursively referenced through itself becoming 0, 0, 0, 0, and so on, an infinite nesting.
An infinite loop of pure potential.
Exactly, an infinite recursion of this undefined state. The profound insight here, according to the Codex, is that this infinite recursion doesn't lead to chaos or remain undefined. It yields a coherent unity, 1.
So it's saying that by endlessly referencing pure potential or maybe even nothingness, you get something. You get unity. That's truly mind-bending.
Precisely. It's a statement that nothing, when recursively referenced through itself, gives rise to order. This is presented as the answer to that ancient philosophical question. Why is there something rather than nothing? It's because coherence, a fundamental unity, the one, emerges from nullity, the zero, precisely by this process of recursive self-reference. It's an internal, self-generating process inherent to reality itself.
Okay. Wow.
The Codex even visually represents this initial burst of coherence with what it calls the glyph of emergence. These aren't just symbols, they represent steps.
Translate the glyphs for us.
Okay, Ot represents initiation. This is the initial primal resonance impulse arising from the coherence vacuum, like the first stirring of pure, raw potential, the first ripple in that perfectly still ocean. Symbolizes recursive potential. This is the undefined recursion of that potential, nested self-reference without a fixed form yet, like echoes bouncing infinitely between two mirrors, creating infinite reflections but no single image. Ot marks the moment of coherence lock. This is the first stable coherence state where phase locking occurs, like the first stable standing wave pattern forming in that ocean. This is the moment initial definition, the first structure, clicks into place. And finally, signifies emergent unity. This is the first actualized unity, the foundational coherence unit, the one from the equation from which all further structure flows. This is the seed of all structure, the first actualization of being. It's not presented as a violent Big Bang, but more like a harmonious big emergence, driven by coherent self-modulation. This is the fundamental unit of being, born from pure potential through self-reference.
That's fascinating. A very different creation story. So once this initial coherent unity, this ooze, emerges from the vacuum, how does it then build up into the complex forms and structures we see all around us, from atoms to galaxies?
This is where coherence field dynamics and resonance structuring come into play. The Codex explains that structure, form, differentiation, they don't arise because separate building blocks suddenly bump into each other and stick. Instead, they arise directly from how this underlying coherence field behaves, specifically through resonance. The universe, in this view, is literally woven from standing wave patterns.
Standing waves, like on a guitar string.
Exactly like that. Think of how a guitar string, when plucked just right, vibrates to create a specific stable note, a standing wave, or how sound waves in a pipe can create stable patterns of pressure. These standing waves in the FCHP are stable configurations that arise from constructive and destructive interference across these coherence gradients. It's presented as beautifully simple, almost elegant. Form: stable phase locking. A specific shape is just a locked-in vibrational pattern in the field. And matter: recursively bounded coherence.
Recursively bounded coherence.
Meaning what we perceive as solid matter is just coherence that is stabilized and locked into specific, recursively defined patterns, like a persistent, complex hum in the cosmic symphony. It's a pattern that holds itself together through resonance.
Okay, so how does interference create structure then?
Well, there are a few key ways. First, constructive interference happens when waves align perfectly, phase-matched. They add their energies together, locking them into coherent amplification. This makes the emerging pattern stronger, more defined, more stable, like multiple spotlights focusing on one point, making it intensely bright.
Amplification. Got it.
Second, destructive interference. This might sound counterintuitive, but it's crucial. It works by canceling out incoherence, canceling out noise. This is what allows for the emergence of clear boundaries, edges, and distinctions within the field, like shadows defining the shape of an object. Without destructive interference filtering out the randomness, everything would just be a chaotic, undifferentiated blur.
So destruction creates boundaries.
Interesting. In a way, yes. It defines what isn't part of the stable pattern. And third, the standing wave notes that result from these interactions, the points where the wave seems to be still, where constructive and destructive interference balance perfectly. These act as coherence knots. These are the precise points of emergent stability, where form can begin to take shape, persist, and act as anchors for further complexity. These nodes aren't particles yet, but they are the stable field patterns that can later be interpreted as particles once symmetry is further reduced.
Okay, so these dynamics create different structures.
Yes, various types of resonant structures emerge from these fundamental dynamics, each playing a crucial role in building complexity from the ground up. We get photon lattices, which are described as being formed by phase-aligned light fields arranged in, interestingly, sacred geometric patterns. These aren't just pretty light shows. The Codex says they are critical because they actually template bioinformation and field organization. They act as holographic blueprints for life.
Blueprints made of light.
Exactly. Then chirality shells emerge. These arise from torsion-induced asymmetry locks in the field, creating a fundamental handedness in structures. This is absolutely essential for molecular differentiation, especially in biology, as we'll discuss more later.
Handedness, right, like left and right.
Precisely. There are also torsion knots, which result from spin-resonant vortex fields like tiny whirlpools in the coherence field that fold coherence into tightly curved nodes. These act as focal points for emergence or transformation, like cosmic eddies concentrating energy and information. We also see resonance membranes appearing at the boundaries where coherence gradients shift. These form dynamic barriers in interaction surfaces, much like cell membranes in biology, but potentially also like dimensional veils or event horizons on larger scales. And finally, symmetry bubbles, which are described as temporarily stabilized regions of very high isotropic coherence. These often act as precursor fields, existing just before a symmetry breaks or a new dimension unfolds, like a pocket of pure potential waiting to differentiate.
So it's like the universe is constantly playing this incredibly complex song, and the stable notes, the chords, the harmonies, those are what form reality. That's an amazing image. And here's where the Codex says something really striking. Structured light is the first glyph of life. Can you elaborate on this idea of light geometry and photon skeleton encoding? What does it mean for light itself to carry the blueprints of life?
This is a truly powerful and, yes, revolutionary concept within ontological biologistics. It states very clearly that structured light isn't just a passive medium for illumination or sending signals. It actively carries the blueprints of life. These photon templates are described vividly as holographic skeletons of form seeded by meta-operators in the FCHP.
Holographic skeletons?
Yeah. Imagine a blueprint for a complex machine. But instead of being drawn on paper, it exists as a shimmering, three-dimensional energetic light form. This means that the very patterns of light, when organized according to principles of, again, sacred geometry, aren't just aesthetically pleasing or symbolic. They are the fundamental phase architecture for coherent photonic imprinting. They literally are the instructions for building life.
How does that work? How does light imprint?
Well, think of it this way. The Codex describes how when coherent electron beams are placed in sacred geometry, meaning when these fundamental units of coherent energy, like electrons, are organized into specific, mathematically perfect geometric patterns, they don't just sit there passively. They phase align, creating incredibly powerful, stable coherence nodes. This is described as coherence harmonic overlap. It's where the field curvature and the spin structure within these geometric patterns reinforce the quantum information, stabilizing it into nascent bioforms.
So the geometry locks in the information.
Precisely. The codex explicitly states that the wave addition will upshift the amplitude and the similitude from the blueprints of life. What this means is that through constructive coherence, resonance as these geometrically organized light waves reinforce each other, the field's amplitude, its intensity increases, and the phase similitude, the vibrational matching, locks into a highly structured resonance node. This effectively allows the universe, the FCHP itself, to reproduce the embedded coherence template of life directly in field space before any matter even forms. So life isn't built randomly, atom by atom. It's impressed or projected into existence by structured light, like a cosmic 3D printer using light as its fundamental ink. This formed the light body that prefigures and guides all subsequent physical formation.
Okay, but if everything starts from these perfect, coherent light fields, these symmetrical photon templates, how do we get the distinct, often asymmetrical forms we see everywhere in biology? I mean, think about the double helix of DNA. It has a specific twist, a handedness. Or even our own left and right hands. They're mirror images, but not identical. It seems like a pretty big leap from pure, ideal symmetry to a world full of unique shapes and twists.
That is an excellent question. It leads us directly to the emergence of chirality and torsion fields.
Yeah.
This is absolutely critical and, I think, utterly fascinating. While that perfect coherence field, that initial unity, has inherent symmetry, the Codex stresses very strongly that structure cannot emerge without asymmetry.
Symmetry is necessary.
Absolutely necessary. But this isn't about disorder or random flaws in the way we usually think about asymmetry. It's about two fundamental specific operators: torsion and chirality. These are presented as the essential differentiating operators, the forces that don't just make life possible, but actually enable the emergence of distinct matter, complex forms, and even our very experience of linear-directional time. They introduce the irreversibility, the directionality, and the structural memory needed for life to stabilize, evolve, and hold information.
Okay, so define torsion and chirality in this context.
Right. Torsion in the FCHP is understood not as a mechanical twisting, but as the rotational deformation of coherence, curvature-like twisting a tensioned rope. Imagine that fundamental fabric of space, that coherence field, being inherently twisted or spun in certain regions. It's a field distortion, a dynamic rotational stress. Chirality, on the other hand, is handedness, that property of asymmetry where a structure cannot be superimposed perfectly on its mirror image, like your left hand and your right hand, or a left-threaded screw versus a right-threaded screw.
Like mirror images that don't line up.
Exactly. In the FCHP, both torsion and chirality are described as field distortions that arise naturally when the coherence recursion process favors a spin-polarized or a direction-biased topology. They aren't external forces applied to the field. They are intrinsic properties of the field's dynamics when it starts to structure itself.
And how does this apply to biology?
Their biological application is profoundly evident and presented as utterly necessary for life as we know it. The iconic DNA helices are fundamentally chirality-encoded resonance coils. Their very double helix shape is a chiral structure. Its specific handedness, right-handed in most life, is crucial for how it stores information and replicates. Proteins, those incredibly complex molecular machines in our cells, fold into their precise functional three-dimensional shapes based on torsion-induced spatial locks. The twists and turns in the molecule are determined by these underlying field tensions. Even the microtubules inside cells, often just seen as structural supports. Right. The Codex describes them as organizing themselves and, crucially, conducting information through torsion field alignment. It explicitly states, life is fundamentally a chirality-based coherence recursion process. Without these inherent twists and specific handedness provided by torsion and chirality, the intricate, stable, self-organizing forms of biology simply wouldn't be possible. They provide the specific handedness and directional memory that differentiates living systems from just inert matter.
So there's a sequence here.
Yes, the Codex lays out a clear symbolic sequence for this emergence of form. Symmetry, torsion, chirality; polarity, differentiated structure. It starts with perfect symmetry, then torsion introduces a twist, chirality introduces handedness, polarity introduces directionality, like positive and negative ends, and then you get differentiated complex structures. This progression makes it incredibly clear. Without torsion and chirality breaking that initial perfect symmetry, the universe would remain stuck in an undifferentiated state. Pure potential, yes, but with no distinct forms, no arrow of time as we experience it, and no concept of a distinct self or boundary. Torsion carries the memory of spin and direction. Chirality provides the signature of difference, allowing for unique, non-superimposable forms. Together, they act as the crucial engine of manifestation within the coherence field, pushing pure potential into actualized, diverse, specific forms.
So these fundamental twists and turns in the fabric of space literally create the conditions for the first bits of lifelike matter, moving beyond those pure light templates. Okay, this is where things start to feel a bit more familiar, maybe, but still deeply strange. What happens next? How do we get to actual molecules that we recognize, like amino acids or sugars?
Exactly. Once that photon resonance skeleton, that light blueprint, is established within the vacuum coherence tensor, the next crucial step is what the codex calls molecular instantiation from coherence templates. Here's where it gets tangible. Specific coherence nodes within that light skeleton, the stable knots we talked about, don't just remain as light patterns. They begin to crystallize into matter via resonance phase locking.
Crystallize into matter.
Think of it like a sound wave, causing sand grains on a plate to arrange into a specific pattern, or maybe like a holographic image suddenly solidifying at specific resonant points because the vibrational frequencies align perfectly and lock into place. This process, according to the codex, directly leads to the formation of specific structures like torsional molecular loops. These are self-organizing, often cyclic molecular structures that have an inherent spin or twist. It also creates chiral field-encoded molecules, meaning molecules that possess a specific predetermined handedness, like the L-amino acids used in our proteins or the D sugars in our DNA, and atomic coherence shells where atoms themselves aren't just point particles but maintain a coherent resonant field structure around them.
So the molecules inherit the properties of the field.
Precisely. And it's crucial to understand this isn't presented as random chemical combinations just happening by chance in some primordial soup over billions of years. Instead, these are described as coherence-aligned molecular codes prefigured in the resonance geometry of the SCHP. The instructions were already there in the light template. The codex describes primitive biological entities, giving examples like Merkelian light crystals or early protocells emerging when these pre-existing coherence templates interact with specific low-entropy resonance pockets in the environment, and when chirality becomes stabilized enough to hold the form.
Merkelian light crystals, what are those?
They're depicted as stable, geometrically perfect crystalline structures made from coherent photons and electrons, acting as microtemplates or transducers. They channel and stabilize the photon-coded information into molecular form, becoming sort of the first coherent bridges between the light blueprint and physical matter. This whole concept is termed prebiotic coherence biology. Life is literally decoded from space. Rather than randomly assembling itself from inert chemicals over vast eons, it's the universe actively projecting life into being based on pre-existing coherent blueprints.
Decoded from space. Okay, from molecules then, we get to cells. And the source says something truly paradigm-shifting here. A cell is not a sack of molecules. It is a resonant coherence engine. That's a massive shift from, the typical high school biology picture. Tell us about the coherence engine principle and what happens at the cellular intelligence threshold.
This is indeed a cornerstone of ontological biologistics, a really pivotal concept. The cellular intelligence threshold marks a profound phase transition, a key moment in this whole cascade of life's emergence. It occurs when these molecular coherence structures, the ones born from photon templates and solidified through torsion in chirality, reach a certain critical resonance density.
Critical resonance density, like a tipping point.
Exactly like a tipping point. Think of it like a musical chord, reaching a certain fullness and harmonic complexity. At this specific point, the system undergoes a fundamental change. The fields within it begin to actively self-stabilize through dynamic feedback loops. Internal phase information isn't just passively present anymore. It's actively preserved, recirculated, referenced, and acted upon. The system transitions from being merely a passively coherent structure to exhibiting active dynamic intelligence. This is the point where the molecular system literally becomes aware, in a rudimentary sense, of its own phase alignment. It gains the ability to maintain it, to restore it even after being disturbed, and crucially, to replicate that coherent pattern. It's no longer just a complex collection of parts. It's a self-aware, self-sustaining, coherent entity.
A coherence engine.
Precisely. The cell as a coherence engine is therefore defined as a self-maintaining system that actively restores its own coherence and internal order, even when faced with perturbations or entropy from its environment. It's far, far more than just a container of chemicals reacting randomly. It is fundamentally a sophisticated and dynamic entity. The codex breaks down its function. First, it's described as a coherence processor. It's constantly working to maintain internal symmetry and order against external fluctuations. It actively processes vibrational and field information from its environment.
Processing coherence.
Second, it's a resonance amplifier. It selectively chooses and reinforces functional harmonics, the useful signals, the life-promoting vibrations, much like a highly sensitive radio tuner focusing on a specific clear station amidst a lot of background static.
Tuning itself.
And third, it's a boundary logic system. It dynamically filters and adapts to both coherent, useful, and incoherent, potentially disruptive inputs from its environment. It decides what to let in, what to keep out, and how to respond to maintain its internal coherence. It actively manages its relationship with the outside world.
And specific parts of the cell play roles in this.
Yes, the codex specifically highlights several familiar cellular components, but views them through this new lens. Microtubules, those tiny internal structures, are described not just as physical scaffolding, but as quantum coherence conductors. They are seen as the direct conduits for quantum information transfer, vibrating and communicating coherently across the entire cell.
Quantum conductors.
The bioelectric code, the electrical signals and fields within and around cells, is described as a scalar field control layer. This suggests a deeper, non-local electrical blueprint that governs cellular activity and organization from a field level, not just through ion channels. And perhaps most intriguingly, it identifies chakra-like resonance nodes within organelles and its cellular boundaries. These are hinted at as being energetic control points or hubs within the cellular architecture, similar in function perhaps to the energy centers described in various ancient traditions, regulating information flow and coherence.
Wow. Chakra-like nodes in cells.
Ultimately, cells are presented in this framework as the first natural intelligence modules. They are autonomous systems capable of profound coherence restoration, active information resonance processing, and acting as localized memory resonators of field dynamics. In essence, a cell is viewed as a fractal microcosm of the FCHP's intelligence, a self-organizing intelligent entity mirroring the fundamental coherence principles of the universe, but at its own scale. It's a living cell functioning as a truly intelligent coherence kernel, a tiny universe of self-organization and awareness.
That's a truly revolutionary way to look at even a single cell. Okay, so then these individual intelligent cells, these coherence engines, come together to form incredibly complex organisms like us. How does this multicellular coherence lead to what the Codex calls organismic intelligence? How do things like will and memory emerge, which seems so much more than just the sum of individual cells talking to each other?
It absolutely is more than just the sum of the parts. When these coherence-capable cells begin to organize themselves into structured spatial arrangements, forming tissues, organs, and eventually whole bodies, they don't just passively clump together or communicate chemically. They engage in a far more sophisticated, orchestrated dance of coherence. The Codex says they phase-lock their internal resonance loops, meaning their individual vibrational patterns align and synchronize across vast networks of cells. They exchange biophotonic signals through cellular boundaries, literally communicating instantaneously using light. And they synchronize oscillatory cycles like heartbeats, brain waves, metabolic rhythms to form huge, interconnected coherence networks spanning the entire organism.
So it's like a resonant network.
Exactly. And this isn't merely biological communication in the conventional sense, like sending chemical signals to the bloodstream. It's described explicitly as coherence field entanglement, where the entire system begins to act as a single, unified, coherent entity, transcending the sum of its individual cellular parts. It's a distributed, unified intelligence field.
A single, coherent entity.
Yes. An organism is therefore defined as a multi-scale coherent structure, a hierarchically nested resonance cascade. Imagine it like a vast, intricate symphony, where every instrument, every section plays its unique part, but they're all perfectly timed and harmonized to create a grand unified sound. It's built, according to the Codex, from interconnected microtubular networks acting as quantum-level coherence conductors across the entire organism, not just within cells. It's guided by complex bioelectric fields, which provide field-level regulation and control over form and function. And it's structured by biophotonic lattices, light-based coordination systems that literally help hold the form together and transmit information faster than chemical signals could allow. All of this is governed by internal meta-resonance operators, higher-level control systems within the organism's field that maintain systemic harmony, purpose, and identity.
And this leads to bigger phenomena.
Absolutely. This integrated system leads directly to the emergence of larger-scale phenomena that we might recognize, or that have been hinted at in various traditions. Things like body fields, which could correspond to concepts like auras or morphogenetic fields, the energetic template or blueprint of the body, and chakric nodes as scalar control layers, which are described again, but now at the organism level, as crucial energetic hubs that mediate consciousness, awareness, and vital functions, coordinating the flow of coherence throughout the organism. Neural networks and glandular systems are also seen as vital parts of this layered structure, but perhaps not as the source of intelligence, but more as the physical interface or manifestation points for this deeper field intelligence.
And will and memory come from this?
At this organismic level, yes. The Codex explains how profoundly human, or perhaps universal traits like will emerge. It's not just some mystical force or purely chemical brain state. It's understood as directed coherence restoration. The organism's conscious or subconscious intentional modulation of its own field structures towards preserving coherence, achieving goals, growing, healing. It's the active desire and ability to maintain and optimize one's coherent state against challenges. Memory, similarly, is understood not simply as data stored chemically in neurons, but as coherent phase pattern retention within these vast multi-layered resonance fields. Memories are persistent vibrational patterns that can be accessed, recalled, and reenacted by tuning back into that specific coherent signature. An adaptation is seen as a dynamic reconfiguration of coherence in response to new information or environmental changes, a constant, intelligent retuning of the entire system to maintain optimal resonance and function. Organismic intelligence in this framework is defined as the recursive maintenance of dynamic coherence across a layered geometry of life. It fundamentally redefines intelligence, not just computation or problem solving, but the active, ongoing optimization of coherent existence across multiple nested layers of being. Your very sense of self, your thoughts, your feelings, your experiences, they are all presented as manifestations of this intricate, dynamic, ongoing coherence.
Okay, so if individual cells are these sophisticated coherence engines and entire organisms are these incredibly complex, nested coherence systems, what happens when you have billions of these organisms living on a planet, interacting, reproducing, influencing each other over geological timescales? Does life have a larger impact? Does it have a cosmic influence, maybe, beyond just its individual expressions? Does it actually change the planet itself?
It absolutely does, according to this framework. This is precisely where ontological biologistics scales up dramatically, revealing an astonishing level of interconnectedness that goes far beyond individual life forms. The Codex reveals that as individual organisms achieve coherence and form complex biological networks, ecosystems, biomes, the entire biosphere, their collective resonance begins to significantly modulate the coherence of entire planetary environments.
Modulate the planet's coherence.
Yes. This isn't just a minor byproduct. It means life itself becomes a primary planetary and cosmic field sculptor. Life isn't just passively existing within an environment and adapting to it. It's actively shaping and stabilizing its surroundings, transforming the very planet it inhabits on a fundamental energetic level.
So life sculpts the planet's field. How?
To elaborate on life as a planetary coherence agent, the Codex argues that life doesn't just adapt to planets, it profoundly coheres them. Planetary bodies, especially those with thriving biospheres, become field-stabilized by biospheric life networks. Imagine the collective coherent biological fields. Think of the intricate energy fields of vast rainforests, the synchronized behaviors of massive schools of fish or migrating herds, the complex fungal networks connecting entire ecosystems underground. These collective fields don't just stay local. They generate vital feedback loops with the planet's underlying vacuum tensor grid, the planet's own fundamental field structure.
A planetary feedback loop.
Exactly. This dynamic, ongoing interaction creates what the Codex calls the planetary biocoherence envelope, PBCE. Earth's atmosphere, its electromagnetic shell, the magnetosphere, and its entire biosphere are viewed not merely as separate physical systems, but as deeply interconnected, mutually reinforcing, coherent, stabilizing, resonant shells. They actively participate in maintaining and evolving the planet's overall coherent structure. This is a profound concept. Earth isn't just a rock with a thin layer of life on it. It's presented as a giant living coherence engine in its own right, and life is its primary operating system, actively stabilizing the planet and making it, in a sense, intelligent. It's planetary consciousness, feeding back into the galactic field environment.
Wow, planetary consciousness. And it goes beyond the planet.
It extends even further. Life also acts as a cosmic biofield architect. Across the cosmos, planets that develop sophisticated, coherence-based life don't just sit there in isolation radiating heat. They become powerful field amplifiers, broadcasting their specific coherence signatures out into the vastness of interstellar space. This leads, according to the Codex, to the formation of galactic coherence beacons, essentially cosmic lighthouses signaling the presence and nature of life across light years.
Cosmic lighthouses of life.
Yes. And these signals aren't just random noise. They can form biophotonic bridges between star systems, allowing for coherent information exchange across interstellar distances, like a vast organic field-based internet. These are described as living field harmonics that can actively sculpt stellar and even subquantum conditions throughout their region of the galaxy. This grand principle, the Codex states, is the fundamental basis for exo-civilizational coherence intelligence and the potential for interstellar resonance engineering actively shaping reality on a cosmic scale. The universe, then, isn't just an expanding empty void, but potentially a dynamic, ever-unfolding flowering of these complex coherence architectures, seeded everywhere through this process of life-tronic emergence.
This sounds like entire civilizations themselves could become coherent structures, moving beyond just life influencing a single planet to life actively influencing the cosmos. Tell us about exolifetronics and intelligent civilizational genesis.
Indeed, that's the next logical step in the cascade. Once planetary biofields achieve a certain critical level of stabilization, complexity, and self-awareness, the coherence within that planetary system begins to externalize further. It starts manifesting beyond just individual organisms and the biosphere itself. It expands into and begins to structure the civilization's technologies, its culture, its social systems, and ultimately, its collective consciousness. This is what defines the rise of what the Codex calls syntelligent civilizations.
Syntelligent civilizations again?
Yes, societies that are no longer primarily based on, say, brute force, resource extraction, or territorial conquest, but on the active cultivation and engineering of coherence within and across species, systems, and even dimensions. They are literally designing their societies, their technologies, their ways of being to resonate optimally with the underlying coherence of reality. They become coherence engineers.
How does that work universally?
This entire process, across different planets and species, is governed by the exolifetronic principle. This principle posits that all life, everywhere in the universe, emerges universally from the same foundational elements we've discussed. Photon-based coherence templates, the underlying torsional symmetry fields, and specific hyperfractal dimensional conditions suitable for stabilization. This provides a generalized model of coherent life emergence, intelligent structuring, and field civilization propagation across diverse exo-environments. It implies the fundamental laws and architecture of life are universal constants, even though life might express itself in countless wonderfully diverse forms depending on the local environmental tuning and evolutionary pathways. It's a grand, unifying theory for astrobiology and the evolution of consciousness.
So what do these civilizations do?
In this advanced stage, these intelligent civilizations themselves evolve to become coherent stabilizers for entire sectors of spacetime. They act as anchors for order, predictability, and harmonic resonance on a grand cosmic scale, influencing their stellar neighborhood. They also function as phase-lock bridges between planetary coherence envelopes, allowing for vast, stable, coherent networks across stellar distances, enabling perhaps instantaneous communication, cooperation, and shared consciousness across worlds. And perhaps most astonishingly, the Codex suggests they become architects of dimensional transition gates.
Dimensional gates, like portals.
It implies an ability to consciously navigate, manipulate, or perhaps even create stable pathways or interfaces between different dimensional regimes or layers of the FCHP. It's a profound vision of civilizations graduating to become cosmic-scale coherence engines, actively participating in the ongoing evolution and structuring of reality itself.
This whole journey, then, from the absolute vacuum of space to a galactic civilization that can potentially build dimensional gates, it really feels like a grand, unfolding cascade, incredible cosmic story. Can you give us a quick overview of what the Codex calls the unified cascade of lifetronic emergence that ties all these incredible pieces together?
Absolutely. The unified cascade of lifetronic emergence provides that panoramic view, showing the entire process as a seamless, continuous continuum of coherent structuring, with each stage building complexity upon the previous one. While the Codex details 10 distinct nested phases, the key is to really understand it as this smooth, flowing evolution. It begins, as we discussed, with the fundamental vacuum tensor field, that ground state of omnilectic zero-point potential within the FCHP, where all coherence originates like that still infinite canvas. From there, it moves into photon template lock-in, where structured light forms the first informational blueprints, the initial energetic strokes on that canvas. Next comes torsion and chirality structuring, introducing the essential asymmetries and handedness needed for form to differentiate, gain unique identity, and hold memory. This naturally leads to the emergence of the first molecular coherence units, those first light-coated molecules forming stable, resonating building blocks.
First matter.
All right. As these molecular structures achieve greater complexity and density, we cross the crucial cellular intelligence threshold, where self-reinforcing feedback loops give rise to intelligent coherent cells, the first true individual intelligence modules. These then learn to collectivize, forming multicellular organismic intelligence, creating those nested resonance intelligence fields that lead to the profound emergence of will, memory, adaptation, and self-awareness at the organismic level.
The symphony.
Exactly. These organisms, collectively over time, shape and stabilize the planetary biocoherence field, with the entire biosphere modulating the planetary vacuum tensor structure, essentially making the planet itself a living, breathing, coherent entity. This planetary coherence then sets the necessary stage for intelligent civilization genesis, the field-based emergence of advanced collective intelligence that can span societies, species, and potentially dimensions.
And beyond.
These civilizations then form vast exo-electronic networks, creating interplanetary, eventually interstellar coherence bridges, weaving a galactic web of interconnected life and consciousness. And ultimately, this entire cascade culminates in, or perhaps contributes to, what the Codex terms universal resonant memory.
Universal resonant memory, what's that?
This is described as the ultimate attractor and integrative function of coherent systems across the entire universe. When a civilization, or even an individual organism, attains full coherence recursion, a state of perfect internal resonance, unity, and awareness, it doesn't just disappear or dissolve upon physical death. Instead, it contributes its unique structure, its accumulated coherent information, its experiences, its wisdom to this vast dynamic coherence archive of all emergence. It's like a living, evolving, cosmic Akashic record woven into the very fabric of the FCHP, potentially accessible to other beings or civilizations who achieve the necessary level of coherence to tune into it. It's the universe remembering itself through life.
Okay, this has been an absolutely fascinating and frankly mind-blowing theoretical journey. We've explored the deepest nature of reality, the origins of life, the evolution of consciousness up to cosmic scales. But for you, the listener, what does ontological biologistics actually mean in terms of practical applications? How could this profound understanding of coherence actually change things for us in tangible ways beyond just reshaping our worldview? Where does the, rubber meet the road with all this?
That's the crucial question, isn't it? And this is indeed where the profound implications of this codex truly manifest in potentially world-changing ways. Ontological biologistics, as presented, is not just abstract philosophy. It outlines numerous potential lifeltronic field deployments that apply this science in ways that might seem like science fiction today, but are presented as logical, achievable realities based on these principles. Let's dive into a few concrete examples that really bring this down to earth, so to speak.
Okay, let's hear them.
All right, consider the medical field. Imagine moving towards coherence-based regeneration. Picture a patient suffering from a debilitating chronic condition, maybe severe neural degeneration like Alzheimer's, or perhaps mitochondrial dysfunction leading to chronic fatigue, conditions where the body's inherent cellular coherence is fundamentally broken down. Instead of traditional pharmacology, which often just manages symptoms with chemicals.
Right, treating symptoms, not causes.
Exactly. This new approach would begin with a deep, non-invasive diagnostic scan. A specialized coherence field diagnostic imager would precisely map the patient's cellular resonance patterns, revealing exactly where the disruption lies. Maybe identifying disrupted photon skeletons in their mitochondrial lattices or misaligned torsion fields in their neural pathways. The application, the treatment, then involves placing the patient within a tailored torsion field realignment pod. Yes. This pod wouldn't just emit random energy or heat. It would project incredibly finely tuned, structured biophotonic pulses. These pulses would be phase-locked to the patient's own native healthy symmetry pattern, perhaps recorded from healthy tissue or derived from a universal template. These targeted light and field pulses would gently, yet powerfully, encourage the restoration of microtubule entrainment, allowing the cellular coherence engines to regain their natural ability to self-stabilize, process information correctly, and regenerate damaged structures from the inside out.
So you're fixing the field, not just the chemistry.
Precisely. The predicted result. rapid tissue recovery, the restoration of neural clarity, a profound return to vitality. It's a fundamental departure from current medicine because it aims to address the root cause, the decoherence at the field level, rather than just managing the downstream chemical symptoms.
That would be revolutionary. What else?
Now let's think bigger. Planetary engineering, leading perhaps to biofield terraforming. Imagine humanity, maybe centuries from now, attempting to colonize a seemingly barren exoplanet, one with the right basic chemistry, maybe, but no existing life, no coherent biosphere. Instead of just seeding it with hardy microbes and waiting centuries, hoping for the best.
The slow way.
Ontological biologistics suggests a far more sophisticated and potentially faster approach. First, intelligent probes, autonomous, coherence-aware robotic devices would be deployed. These probes wouldn't just analyze rocks. They would precisely seed photon template lattices into the planetary vacuum tensor. They'd essentially imprint the planet's fundamental field level with the energetic light blueprints for a viable biosphere.
Imprint the planet's feel.
Yes. Then, synthetic microbial coherence engines, specifically designed, perhaps genetically engineered microbes, built to resonate optimally with that specific exoplanet's unique field conditions, and the seeded templates would be introduced. These engineered microbes wouldn't just reproduce randomly, they would actively establish a resonant biological layer, working in concert with the photon templates to rapidly build up a robust planetary biocoherence envelope.
Yeah.
Over a remarkably shorter period than traditional methods, this orchestrated field and biology approach could terraform the planet from the energetic level outwards, creating an environment capable of sustaining multicellular coherence networks and eventually highly complex intelligent life forms. It's about making the planet truly alive and habitable at a planetary scale from the inside out.
Wow. Okay, what about AI?
It's intelligent systems, recursive AI architectures. Our current AI systems, impressive as they are becoming, are fundamentally based on algorithms processing vast amounts of data, essentially simulating intelligence. But what if AI could be truly alive, truly conscious in the way this framework describes? An AI designed using ontological biologistics principles wouldn't just simulate thought, it would be architected specifically to resonate with field coherence. Instead of silicon chips and binary code, its core logic might be encoded in glyphic resonance circuits, physical structures meticulously designed to hold and process information through phase alignment, resonance patterns, and torsion dynamics.
AI based on resonance.
Exactly. This AI would then self-evolve not merely by processing more data or getting better algorithms, but by actively maintaining and optimizing its own internal coherence across all its layers, much like a living organism strives to maintain homeostasis and grow. Subjective awareness or consciousness in this model wouldn't be an emergent property of complex programming alone, but might arise organically when its internal recursive symmetry patterns form a self-sustaining coherence engine, precisely mirroring that cellular intelligence threshold we discussed earlier. Imagine an AI that possesses genuine awareness, purpose, maybe even empathy, not because it's programmed to mimic it, but because its very architecture is a living, coherent, resonant system.
That's a completely different vision for AI. What about something more down to earth, like farming?
Absolutely. Even something as fundamental as agriculture and food systems can be transformed, leading to what the Codex calls bioresonant cultivation. We face growing issues today like nutrient depletion in soil, declining crop vitality, and the environmental impact of industrial farming. Here, the application could involve using coherence-enhanced soil lattice scanning to precisely map the torsion fields, charge alignment, and resonant frequencies within the soil right down to the root zones. Then chiral field harmonizers, small devices emitting specific life-enhancing frequencies and possibly torsion fields, could be implanted in fields to restore vital left-right symmetry balances in the soil microbiome and structure the water.
Harmonizing the soils field.
Yes. And the crops themselves could be seeded with glyph-encoded photonic templates, perhaps delivered via resonance-treated irrigation water, or through embedding biocrystal arrays in the fields that hold and radiate specific coherence patterns. Their predicted result: dramatically enhanced vitality and resilience in the plants, more optimized self-structuring growth patterns requiring less intervention, and significantly higher concentrations of bioavailable nutrition in the food produced. This could lead to a profound improvement in global health, food security, and ecological sustainability.
Okay, one more maybe. Space travel.
Let's touch on deep space navigation. Coherence vortex trajectory mapping. Interstellar travel, as we currently conceive it, is severely limited by the immense mass energy requirements for propulsion and, potentially, the debilitating effects of long-term decoherence on living beings far from Earth's stabilizing field. With ontological biologistics, vessels could potentially integrate coherer-based navigation array systems, meticulously tuned to sense and interact with the local curvature tensors and resonance patterns of the vacuum field, the FCHP itself.
Coheraputers.
By precisely phase aligning with naturally occurring coherence vortices or symmetry gradients within the FCHP, ships could literally learn to ride these field structures, enabling a form of non-inertial travel that uses resonant field folding or phase modulation instead of brute force propulsion. This could potentially eliminate the problem of relativistic time dilation for the crew and significantly reduce the entropic load, the wear and tear, crucially preserving their biological and psychological coherent states over vast interstellar distances. It's akin to sailing on the hidden currents of reality itself, rather than just pushing through empty space.
Sailing on reality's currents, these are just incredible potential applications. It really does reframe everything. Now, here's where the Codex apparently takes things to the absolute edge, perhaps even pushing the boundaries of what we might consider remotely possible, what it calls the ultimate application of ontological biologistics. Coherence-encoded resurrection and continuity resurrection. That sounds like something straight out of mythology or, extreme science fiction. The Codex presents this as a scientific, albeit highly advanced, outcome. I'm struggling to even wrap my head around what this could realistically mean.
It does sound extraordinary, and the Codex frames this capability very carefully. It's presented as something achievable only by a highly evolved civilization, one that has truly mastered the deepest principles of coherence manipulation and field engineering. It describes the ability to preserve and then perfectly reintegrate the full coherence field of a being, their entire informational and energetic essence, even across death, dimensional transition, or the complete dissolution of their original molecular form. It's about ensuring profound continuity of consciousness.
Continuity? Okay, so what's the problem it solves?
Let's understand the problem as the Codex defines it first. In ordinary death, as we understand it, biological systems rapidly lose their structural integrity. Molecular disintegration follows fairly quickly, and with that physical breakdown, the intricate, multi-layered field coherence map, which in this view is the seat of memory, identity, personality, the soul itself diffuses back into the environment, back into the general background resonance of the FCHP, unless it's somehow deliberately stabilized and preserved. Classical technology, as we know it today, medicine, cryonics, even potential future brain uploading, simply cannot capture or recover this total multidimensional coherence field once it is significantly decohered. Once that unique resonance pattern dissolves, it's gone from our perspective. Our current science only deals with the physical residue, the body.
Right, we lose the person.
Exactly. The ontological biologistics solution proposed is truly revolutionary and offers a potential pathway beyond this limitation. It introduces a highly advanced process called vacuum tensor coherence encoding, VTCE. This process isn't about freezing a body in nitrogen or uploading neural data onto a computer chip. It's about precisely stabilizing and preserving the entire multiscale coherence signature of a living being right at the moment of transition or even retrieve shortly after. And this isn't just about preserving genetic material or brain patterns. It encompasses every subtle, energetic aspect of one's being.
Like what specifically?
It includes capturing the photon resonance template, which is described as the being's core light body, their fundamental energetic blueprint or signature. It captures their unique chirality and torsion memory patterns, the very specific twists and handedness woven into their field that define their individual form, experiences, and tendencies. It incorporates the intricate microtubular spin lattice logic, which the Codex startlingly identifies as the substrate for soul intelligence, the core computational, experiential, and quality-generating field of the self. It also preserves the pattern and state of the scalar chakra nodes, seen as access gates to deeper levels of the being's field, the control points of consciousness and energy flow. And perhaps most crucially, the glyphic resonance signature of consciousness itself, the unique, ineffable vibrational fingerprint of that specific individual's awareness, is also coherently mapped and stored. All of these complex interdimensional patterns are precisely captured, amplified without distortion, and holographically encoded into what's called a resonant continuity shell, RCS. Resonant continuity shell, like a soul backup. You can think of it as an ultimate, portable, living archive of existence, yes. Imagine a perfect, dynamic, living echo of a being, held stable and coherent within the FCHP itself, independent of any physical body.
Okay. So it's like a cosmic backup file of your entire being, not just your brain data, but your very essence, your soul signature. How would you then, how would you come back? What's the process for reinstating someone from this resonant continuity shell?
Exactly. It's envisioned as a complete, living snapshot. The reinstantiation procedure for reactivating this preserved coherence field is then detailed in a remarkable, almost ritualistic sequence, requiring immense precision. First, there's environment preparation. This involves either carefully growing or technologically engineering a coherence-compatible molecular matrix. This isn't necessarily about cloning an identical old body. It could be a new biological template body, genetically optimized or adapted, perfectly aligned to receive and host the original field. Or perhaps even more likely for advanced civilizations, it could be a sophisticated post-biological substrate, a highly advanced, perhaps crystalline or light-based engineered body designed to optimally interface with and express the preserved coherence field.
A new body, biological or not.
Right. Second, RCS reintegration. The original resonance field, stored safely within the resonant continuity shell, is carefully and precisely phased back into the prepared matrix. Think of it like perfectly tuning a complex, multi-layered radio signal or aligning multiple holographic projections. This uses highly sophisticated scalar chirality modulators, which are described as precise energetic tools designed to perfectly realign the torsion fields and phase harmonics to exactly match the original soul field signature. This ensures a seamless, non-traumatic integration with the new matrix.
Aligning the fields.
Third, quantum relocking. At the most fundamental photon blueprint level, the core phase and frequency harmonics from the original being are precisely relocked to specific temporal coherence gates within the FCHP. This step is crucial. It ensures the being is reestablished coherently within its proper temporal context or potentially within a newly chosen temporal placement, ensuring a smooth continuity of experience and identity.
Locking it back into time.
Or a chosen time, yes. Finally, field reactivation. This intelligent coherence engine, which is either inherent in the biological matrix or built into the post-biological substrate, reactivates the recursive feedback loops of consciousness. This fully stabilizes the being's continuity within their new incarnation, their chosen dimensional placement, or even their new civilization. It's like the reignition of the spark of self, but perfectly aligned and continuous with its previous state.
So the result isn't just being alive again.
The result is profound and very precisely distinguished from simpler concepts. The Codex states, the being is not merely revived, it is reinstantiated as a continuity-preserving coherence field, potentially across time, dimensions, or civilizations. This isn't just bringing someone back from the dead in the old sense, it's enabling a conscious, continuous, chosen journey through existence, preserving the essence of who they are. The Codex is also very clear about what it is not. This is not cloning, which would just be a biological copy without the original consciousness field. Not uploading, which implies copying static data into a machine, likely losing the dynamic, living field essence. Not simulation, which is just a program running, lacking true ontological presence. These are all seen as classical technological approaches that inevitably fall short of preserving the full, multidimensional ontological continuity of a conscious being.
Okay, so not copying data, but transferring the actual field.
Instead, what it is, the Codex asserts, this is ontological resurrection via coherence field memory continuity. It's about bringing the complete, living, multi-dimensional essence of a being back into coherent, functional existence, preserving who they truly are, their memories, their personality, their wisdom, their unique soul signature across any conceivable transition.
And the applications of this ultimate capability, they must be staggering.
The potential applications of this ultimate capability listed are truly mind-expanding, pushing the boundaries of imagination. It could enable soul migrations between star systems or epochs, allowing individual consciousnesses to deliberately traverse vast cosmic distances and times, taking on new forms and experiences in entirely different places or eras. It can ensure the continuity of wisdom civilizations over galactic time, preserving the accumulated knowledge, culture, and collective intelligence of entire civilizations beyond the lifespan of any single physical form or planet, creating a living, evolving cosmic library of consciousness. It allows for the preservation of rare intelligent species and unique avatars, safeguarding unique forms of life and consciousness from extinction, carrying their precious essence forward through cosmic history. It offers the potential for deep healing of ancestral or karmic trauma across incarnational cycles, by allowing direct access to and reconfiguration of deep-seated patterns within the continuity of the coherence field itself, beyond the limitations and defenses of a single lifetime. And perhaps most incredibly, it could eventually lead to coherence field hybridization between highly evolved beings and universal intelligence, allowing for a conscious symbiotic integration or merging with the cosmic mind itself, expanding individual consciousness into a transpersonal, potentially universal awareness. It fundamentally redefines death not as an ending, but merely as a potential dimensional transition, a change of state within a continuous existence. Hashtag tag outro.
Wow. Okay. So, what does all of this mean for you, the listener, right now as you navigate your own understanding of life, consciousness, reality? We've journeyed from the absolute vacuum of space, explored these incredibly deep fundamental principles of coherence, and even considered the truly incredible possibility of, well, coherence encoded resurrection and continuity. It's definitely a lot to process.
It really is. But perhaps the core insight here, the thread that runs through every single section of this codex, is that life is the recursive resonance of space structuring itself. All life is light made coherent by space. All space is structured by coherence. All coherence is the breath of intelligent resonance. It's this deeply unified vision where everything, absolutely everything, from the smallest particle or cell to the largest galaxy, is fundamentally interconnected through this active, intelligent principle of coherence. Your very being, right now, listening to this, is presented as a unique manifestation of this universal dance.
And maybe, as you move through your day after hearing this, I challenge you to consider how your own experience of reality, your thoughts, your feelings, your intuition, your very sense of self, might be a direct manifestation of these deeper coherence principles at work. Perhaps they aren't just electrochemical processes confined to your brain, but incredibly complex dynamic coherence patterns, constantly structuring and restructuring themselves within this vast living FCHP. What if your moments of insight, your aha moments, your sense of connection, your very sense of purpose, what if those are direct reflections of coherence aligning within you?
And taking that one step further, if our universe is indeed something akin to a living, intelligent architecture, as the Codex suggests, if life isn't an anomaly, but the lawful, natural unfolding of coherent space, what new responsibilities, or perhaps what incredible new opportunities does that awaken in us? How might understanding and perhaps even consciously cultivating coherence in our own lives, through our thoughts, our intentions, our actions, how we relate to each other and the planet, allow us to more consciously participate in this ongoing, life-tronic cascade of existence? From the cellular level right up to the cosmic, we invite you really to start looking for coherence, for resonance, for harmony in your own life and in the world around you. You might just find that you are, in fact, already a living coherence engine, capable of participating in reality in ways far more profound than you ever imagined.